The lights buzzed overhead as I restocked the jewelry display at Harbor and Home. It was Saturday morning, and we were already short-staffed. The weekend sale meant double the usual customer traffic, but corporate had cut our hours again. I'd been working here for 6 years, and I'd never seen morale this low among the staff. When my phone rang, I saw Janelle's name and immediately knew something was wrong. She never called during work hours unless it was serious. "Erin, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse with fever. "I can barely stand up. The flu hit me hard last night. I was throwing up until 3 in the morning. I glanced around the store. Only 3 of us were scheduled, and we had a big sale starting. The jewelry section alone needed 2 people to handle the expected rush. "Don't worry about it," I said. "I'll cover your shift. Just focus on getting better." "Are you sure? I know you had plans with Todd tonight, dinner reservations and everything." "Plans can wait. Take care of yourself." An hour later, Sabrina Hodge stormed through the front doors like a hurricane. Our new regional manager had cold eyes and a sharp smile that never reached them. She marched straight to the customer service desk, where I was helping an elderly woman find a birthday gift for her granddaughter. "Erin Taylor," she snapped loud enough for everyone to hear. "My office. Now." My stomach dropped. The elderly woman looked embarrassed as I apologized and followed Sabrina to the back. Something told me this wasn't going to end well. "You violated company protocol," Sabrina said, not even looking up from her tablet. Her manicured nails clicked against the screen as she scrolled through what looked like employee files. "Switching shifts without proper authorization is grounds for immediate termination." I blinked hard. I was just helping Janelle. She's really sick, and we're understaffed. I've covered shifts before without any problems. Mrs. Henderson approved it last month when... That's exactly the problem. Her voice was ice cold. She finally set down the tablet and fixed me with a stare that could freeze fire. "You think you can do whatever you want around here? Well, I'm here to establish order and proper procedures. But the policy says emergency coverage is allowed if..." "Don't quote policy to me." She finally looked up, her eyes filled with disgust. "You're creating a culture of entitlement, making up sob stories about sick employees to justify your own agenda. I've seen your type before." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Janelle really is sick. Call her if you want to verify. Check her temperature records from the employee health log." Sabrina laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm sure you coached her well. Probably told her exactly what symptoms to claim. Pack your things, Erin. You're terminated effective immediately." The words hit me like a slap. 6 years of perfect performance reviews, countless overtime hours, and commendations from customers meant nothing. I was being marched out in front of everyone I'd worked alongside for years, like some kind of criminal. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. 6 years of my life, gone in 10 minutes. The radio played some cheerful pop song that felt like mockery. I turned it off and drove in silence, trying to process what had just happened. When I walked through the front door, Todd was sprawled on the couch watching TV, and his mother Doris was folding laundry at the kitchen table. The house smelled like the cinnamon candles Doris loved, normally a comforting scent that now felt suffocating. "You're home early," Todd said without looking away from the screen. Some action movie was playing, explosions echoing through our small living room. I got fired. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like they belonged to someone else's story. That got his attention. He muted the TV and turned around, looking more curious than concerned. "Fired? What did you do?" "I covered for Janelle when she called in sick. The new regional manager said I violated protocol. But Todd, I've done this dozens of times before without any issues." Doris snorted from the kitchen, shaking out one of Todd's work shirts with unnecessary force. "There's always 2 sides to every story, Erin. What aren't you telling us?" My chest tightened. That's exactly what happened. I have emails proving I followed proper procedure in the past. I can show you. "Maybe you were too emotional," Todd said, already losing interest. "You know how you get when you're stressed. Did you argue with her?" "No, I just explained." "There's your problem," Doris chimed in. "Nobody likes a know-it-all." I stood there in my own living room, feeling completely alone. They didn't even ask if I was okay. That night, I cooked dinner like always. Doris made little comments about how I seasoned the chicken, and Todd scrolled through his phone, occasionally laughing at something I couldn't see. Neither of them mentioned my job again, as if losing my career was just a minor inconvenience that had already been forgotten. The silence at the dinner table was deafening. I kept waiting for someone to ask how I was feeling, or what I planned to do next, or even just acknowledge that something significant had happened to me today. Instead, Todd complained about his supervisor's new scheduling policy, and Doris launched into a detailed recap of her soap opera's latest plot twists. After dinner, I escaped to the bathroom and finally let myself cry in the shower. The hot water mixed with my tears as I replayed every moment of that horrible conversation with Sabrina. 6 years of dedication, staying late when others called out, covering holidays so my coworkers could spend time with their families, and it meant nothing. When I came out, Todd was already in bed with his back to me. I slipped under the covers and stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The digital clock glowed 11:47 p.m., then 12:15, then 1:23. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. It was Janelle, and she sounded terrified. "Aaron, I'm so sorry. I just heard what happened. I think I know what really happened, but I can't talk on the phone. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street? I'm scared to say this at work." I grabbed my keys, my heart racing. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. Maybe there was more to this story than Sabrina had let on. Janelle looked terrible, pale and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She clutched her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her warm. Her hands were still shaking slightly, whether from the flu or from nerves. I couldn't tell. She'd chosen a corner table where we couldn't be easily overheard. "They planned it," she whispered, glancing around the mostly empty coffee shop. "I heard Sabrina talking to the district manager yesterday before I left sick. She said she wanted to cut dead weight and that you were too comfortable in your position. She actually used those exact words." My blood ran cold. She planned to fire me, but why? My performance reviews have always been excellent. She was angry that you didn't ask permission to cover my shift. Said it showed you thought you could make decisions above your pay grade. Janelle's hands were shaking harder now. "Aaron, you've never even had a write-up. Your record is spotless. Everyone knows you're the most reliable person in the store." I thought about all the commendation emails I'd saved over the years. The customer compliments, the times I'd stayed late to help with inventory when other managers had emergencies. "Do you have any proof of this conversation?" "There's a group chat. I saw some messages, but they delete them quickly." She leaned closer, lowering her voice even more. "Aaron, I think she's been looking for a reason to get rid of you for weeks. This was just her excuse. She's been watching you, taking notes, waiting for any opportunity." I felt something hard settle in my chest. This wasn't about protocol. This was personal, calculated, and deliberate. I spent the afternoon printing every positive email I'd ever received. Performance reviews, customer compliments, schedule changes I'd helped with. The stack grew thicker as I dug through my files. When Todd came home, he barely glanced at the papers spread across the dining table. "Still playing victim?" he asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "I'm documenting everything. This wasn't a fair termination." Doris looked up from her magazine. "Honey, sometimes you just have to accept that maybe you weren't as good at your job as you thought." I bit my tongue and kept organizing. That's when I noticed something strange in the stack of bills Todd had left on the counter. A payday loan statement with my signature, except I'd never taken out a payday loan. My hands trembled as I examined it closer. The signature looked like mine, but the loops were wrong. Someone had forged my name for an $800 loan. I looked at Todd, who was suddenly very interested in his phone. My husband had been stealing from me while I was getting fired for trying to help a friend. Instead of confronting Todd about the loan, I decided to focus on rebuilding my life. I updated my resume and started job hunting, but I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Let them think I was wallowing. Within a week, I found a temporary admin position at a corporate office 2 towns over. It was quiet work, scanning old HR files and organizing records. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. More importantly, nobody there knew about my situation. On my first day, I was assigned a desk near the window. As I settled in with my coffee, I looked out at the parking lot and froze. The building across the street had a familiar logo: Harbor and Home Corporate Headquarters. My new job was literally overlooking the corporate office of the company that had just fired me. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Maybe this was exactly where I needed to be. The supervisor, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, showed me to a room full of filing cabinets. We're digitizing old employment records for auditing purposes. Just scan everything and upload it to the system. The work was mind-numbing, but I found myself actually enjoying the quiet routine. No customers to deal with, no Sabrina breathing down my neck, just me, a scanner, and boxes of files. That's when I started noticing patterns. As I scanned employee records from Harbor and Home stores across the region, I saw the same signature over and over: Sabrina Hodge. Termination after termination, all for minor policy violations. A cashier fired for being 3 minutes late. A stock clerk terminated for wearing the wrong color shoes. A department supervisor let go for insubordination, which turned out to be suggesting a different way to organize the stockroom. All of these people had good performance records before Sabrina arrived. All of their terminations were signed off by her with almost identical justification language. It was like she was using a template. I started making copies of the most suspicious files, staying late to avoid questions. Mrs. Patterson didn't mind. She just appreciated that someone was finally tackling the backlog. By the end of my second week, I had a disturbing picture emerging. Sabrina wasn't just a tough manager. She was systematically targeting good employees. At home, things were getting worse. Todd came home late more often, always with excuses about overtime or stopping for drinks with coworkers. Doris made passive-aggressive comments about me being deadweight now that I wasn't bringing home my old salary. One evening, I was doing laundry when I found a hotel receipt in Todd's jacket pocket. The Riverside Inn, 45 miles away. 2 guests, 1 room. The date was last Tuesday, the same night he'd told me he was working late. My hands went numb as I stared at the paper. My marriage was falling apart at the same time my career had been destroyed. Everything I'd built my life around was crumbling. But instead of falling apart, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. I carefully photographed the receipt and put it back exactly where I'd found it. If Todd wanted to play games, I'd play smarter. That night, I checked our landline voicemail. There was a deleted message, but I recovered it using the system Todd didn't know I understood. His voice came through clearly. "She's just in a phase. I'll handle her, don't worry." The voice responding made my blood freeze. It was Sabrina. Janelle met me at the same coffee shop, looking even more nervous than before. She kept glancing over her shoulder as she pulled out her phone. "I shouldn't be showing you this," she whispered, "but I can't sleep at night knowing what they did to you." She opened a group chat called Management Team. The messages made my stomach turn. Sabrina had written, "Finally got rid of the doormat." She was getting too comfortable thinking she could make decisions. Other managers had responded with laughing emojis and comments like, "About time," and she always acted like she owned the place. One message from the district manager read, "Good. Corporate's been asking about reducing payroll costs. This helps the numbers." "They were celebrating," Janelle said, tears in her eyes. "They were actually celebrating firing you for helping me." The worst part was a message from Sabrina sent an hour after my termination. "One down, several to go. Time to clean house and boost those profit margins." I wasn't just collateral damage. I was the first domino in a larger plan to cut staff and pad their bonuses. That evening, I surprised Todd and Doris by cooking their favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings. I set the table with our good china and even lit candles. "What's the occasion?" Todd asked suspiciously. "Just wanted to do something nice," I said with my sweetest smile. "You've both been so patient with me during this difficult time." Doris actually looked pleased for once. "Well, it's good to see you're focusing on what really matters, taking care of your family." I nodded and smiled, serving them generous portions while I listened to them complain about their days. Todd's boss was being unreasonable. Doris's soap opera had been canceled. Such terrible problems. All the while, I was thinking about phone calls I needed to make. I'd already looked up property records online. The house was in my name only, purchased before our marriage with my inheritance from my grandmother. The next morning, after they both left, I called a lawyer. Not to sue Harbor and Home yet, but to understand my rights regarding the house and Todd's financial shenanigans. The forgery alone is a felony, the lawyer told me, and since the house is solely in your name, you have every right to ask him to leave. Back at my temp job, I was getting deeper into the filing system. Mrs. Patterson had given me access to budget reports and performance metrics, trusting me to organize them properly. That's when I met Laura from the finance department. She was a quiet woman about my age who often worked late, just like me. "You're very thorough," she said one evening, noticing how carefully I was cross-referencing files. "Most temps just scan and go. I like things to make sense," I said carefully. She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Can I ask you something? Have you noticed anything odd about the regional budget reports? Specifically, the staffing costs versus actual headcount?" My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "Some of the numbers don't add up, like they're reporting savings from staff cuts, but the payroll costs are still being billed to corporate." She paused. "I've been waiting for someone to ask." Laura pulled up a spreadsheet on her computer. The numbers were shocking. Sabrina's region was claiming massive payroll savings while still billing corporate for the same labor costs. Where was that money going? "How long has this been happening?" I asked. "About 6 months, right around when Sabrina started." Laura and I started meeting during lunch breaks to compare notes. She showed me how Sabrina had been creating phantom employees, people who existed on paper to justify budget allocations but didn't actually work in the stores. Meanwhile, I was documenting real people who'd been fired. Good employees with families, bills, and nowhere else to go. I started tracking them down, offering to buy coffee in exchange for their stories. The pattern was always the same. A minor infraction, a sudden termination, and a sense that Sabrina had been looking for any excuse to get rid of them. Maria, a single mother, had been fired for taking a bathroom break during a busy period. The termination paperwork claimed she'd abandoned her post, but customers I'd spoken to said she was gone for less than 5 minutes. James, a college student, was terminated for dress code violations because his shoes were brown instead of black. He'd worked there for 2 years without a single complaint. The most heartbreaking was Anna, a longtime assistant manager who'd been let go for insubordination. Her crime? Suggesting they hire more part-time help during the holiday season. 2 weeks later, she died by suicide, unable to cope with the financial pressure. I visited Anna's grave that weekend and cried for the first time since my termination. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about cutting costs. Sabrina was running a sophisticated scam. She'd fire legitimate employees, then create fake ones on paper to maintain her payroll budget. The difference went into a discretionary fund that she controlled. Laura showed me invoices for training consultants and efficiency experts that didn't seem to exist. Thousands of dollars flowing to companies with no real addresses or phone numbers. "She's been padding her performance bonuses," Laura explained. "Every dollar she saves on payroll adds to her yearly earnings. She's made an extra $40,000 this year alone." Meanwhile, good people were losing their jobs and struggling to feed their families. Anna wasn't the only one who'd suffered long-term consequences. 3 other former employees had filed for bankruptcy or lost their homes. One day, I was working late when I heard familiar voices in the hallway. My blood turned to ice as I recognized Sabrina's laugh. She was visiting corporate for some kind of meeting. I ducked into the supply closet and waited for her to pass. Through the crack in the door, I could see her walking with 2 executives, gesturing confidently as she talked about operational improvements. She had no idea I was 10 feet away, building a case that would destroy her. The next morning, I decided to test something. I walked to the break room at the exact time I knew Sabrina would be there for her usual coffee meeting with the regional executives. She was standing by the window, talking about quarterly numbers when I entered. Our eyes met for just a moment. She looked right through me like I was nothing, not even worth acknowledging. I poured my coffee slowly, listening to her brag about reducing labor costs while maintaining productivity. She had no idea that the dead weight she'd fired was standing 3 feet away, documenting every lie she told. As I walked past her to leave, I accidentally bumped her elbow, causing her to spill coffee on her expensive shoes. "Excuse me," I said politely. She glared at me with pure annoyance. "Watch where you're going." I apologized with a sweet smile and left. Behind me, I heard her tell the executives, "Some people are just born to be invisible." That afternoon, Laura found me in the filing room with tears in my eyes. Not from sadness, but from rage. "I want to show them everything," I said. "All of it." At home, Todd's behavior was getting worse. He'd started coming home drunk several nights a week, claiming stress from work. One night, he grabbed my arm when I asked where he'd been. "Don't question me," he slurred. "You're not exactly in a position to make demands." I pulled away and looked him straight in the eye. "Don't touch me again." Something in my voice must have warned him, because he backed off. But I could see in his face that he was getting desperate. The payday loans were piling up, and he knew I'd eventually find out about all of them. Doris made things worse by constantly commenting on how I was bringing the family down with my bad attitude. According to her, I should be grateful that Todd was still willing to support me after my professional failure. I started staying late at work more often, using the time to build my case. Laura had given me access to financial reports that painted a damning picture of Sabrina's operation. But I needed more than numbers. I needed someone in authority to take this seriously. That's when Laura suggested I ask to present a routine audit report to the quarterly compliance meeting. "Just one small favor," I asked Laura. "Can you run a report comparing actual headcount versus budgeted positions across all regions?" She raised an eyebrow. "That's going to show some ugly discrepancies." "That's what I'm hoping for." The report was devastating. Sabrina's region showed massive gaps between reported employees and actual staff. Other regions had minor variances, but hers looked like Swiss cheese. Laura printed it out and left it on her supervisor's desk as part of the regular monthly reports. 2 days later, her phone rang. "The CFO wants to know who requested this analysis," she told me. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. "What did you tell them?" I said it was a routine audit cross-check that I thought looked interesting. She paused. "Aaron, they want to meet with whoever pulled this data. They want answers." I took a deep breath. Set up the meeting. That night, I prepared a presentation that would change everything. Just facts, just numbers. Just the truth about what Sabrina had been doing to innocent people. The conference room felt massive as I sat across from 3 executives I'd only seen in corporate newsletters. The CFO, the VP of Human Resources, and the Regional Operations Director all had copies of Laura's report in front of them. "Miss Taylor," the CFO began, "we understand you've been working with our finance team on some data analysis. Can you walk us through what you found?" My voice was steady as I opened my laptop and began the presentation I'd titled, "Employment Patterns and Budget Variances, a Compliance Review." I showed them the termination patterns, the phantom employees, the budget discrepancies. I presented testimonials from fired workers and documentation of Sabrina's systematic targeting of long-term employees. When I got to the slide about Anna's suicide, the room went completely silent. "How long have you been tracking this?" the HR VP asked. 6 weeks. Ever since I started working here." "And what's your background in this industry?" I looked them straight in the eye. "I'm Aaron Taylor, former assistant manager at Harbor and Home Store number 247, terminated by Sabrina Hodge for covering a sick colleague's shift." The silence that followed was deafening. Within 48 hours, everything changed. Sabrina was suspended pending investigation. 2 district managers who'd been complicit in her scheme were placed on administrative leave. An audit team was dispatched to every store in the region. I kept working my temp job, but now I was officially consulting on the investigation. Former employees were contacted, financial records were subpoenaed, and the phantom employee scheme was unraveled piece by piece. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. "You have no idea who you're messing with." Sabrina's voice was pure venom. "I will destroy you." "Actually," I said calmly, "I think I know exactly who I'm messing with. A thief who stole from her own company and ruined innocent people's lives. You're nothing. A nobody who couldn't even keep a simple retail job." You're right about one thing, I replied. I was nothing to you, but now I'm the person who ended your career. She hung up, but I could hear the fear in her voice. Her perfect scam was unraveling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Todd's world started crashing down around the same time. His boss called me directly after receiving an anonymous email with photos of hotel receipts and evidence of the forged loan documents. Mrs. Taylor, I need to ask you about some concerning information regarding your husband's conduct and possible fraud. By the end of that conversation, Todd was unemployed too. He came home drunk and furious, screaming that I'd ruined his life. How could you do this to me? He shouted. After everything I've done for you. Doris chimed in from the kitchen. Aaron, how could you be so vindictive? He's your husband. I looked at both of them calmly. I didn't do anything to him. He did it to himself when he forged my signature and cheated on me. You can't prove anything, Todd slurred. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made of his drunk confession 2 nights earlier. His face went white as he heard his own voice admitting to the loans and the affair. Pack your things, I said quietly. Both of you. You have until tomorrow. I spent that night in a motel, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I needed space to think and plan my next move without their constant negativity poisoning the air. The next morning my phone rang. It was the CFO from Harbor and Home. Miss Taylor, we'd like to offer you a position in our corporate compliance department. We need someone with your analytical skills and integrity to help us prevent this kind of situation in the future. The salary was more than I'd ever made at the store level. Full benefits, vacation time, and the respect I'd never gotten from Sabrina or Todd. I accept, I said without hesitation. That afternoon I attended Sabrina's final disciplinary hearing as a witness. She sat across the table looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, no longer the intimidating figure who'd destroyed my life 6 months earlier. When they asked me to describe her conduct and its impact, I spoke calmly and factually. No emotion, no revenge fantasy. Just the truth about what she'd done to me and others. She was terminated immediately and escorted from the building by security. My new office had a window overlooking the same parking lot where I'd worked as a temp. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from scanning files in the basement to helping design company policy on the executive floor. My first project was developing better protections for employees facing termination. Clear procedures, mandatory review processes, and anonymous reporting systems for managers who abused their power. Every policy I wrote, I thought about Anna and the others who'd suffered under Sabrina's reign. They deserved justice, even if it came too late for some of them. The investigation had revealed the full scope of the fraud, over $200,000 stolen through phantom employees and fake consulting fees. Sabrina faced criminal charges and was banned from working in retail management anywhere in the state. But the real victory was the 23 employees who were contacted for potential reinstatement. Most found better jobs elsewhere, but they all got closure and references that acknowledged their good performance. Maria got her job back and a promotion. James transferred to a store near his college with a manager who respected his dedication. 2 weeks after starting my new job, my phone rang. It was Doris, crying. Aaron, please. Todd moved out and left me with all the bills. The bank is calling about the house payments. I don't know what to do. I listened patiently as she begged me not to sell the house, promising she'd never spoken against me, claiming she'd always known I were right about everything. Doris, I said gently, you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, the locks change. But I'm family. Family supports each other. Family doesn't call each other deadweight or blame them for other people's crimes. She hung up, but I felt nothing but relief. The house would be quiet again, peaceful again, mine again. That weekend, I changed every lock anyway. I wanted to be sure they understood this wasn't a negotiation. 6 months later, I was promoted to senior compliance officer. My desk was covered with thank you cards from employees whose situations I'd helped resolve and policies I'd helped improve. The criminal trial was finally over. Sabrina received 18 months in prison and lifetime ban from retail management. The judge specifically mentioned the testimony about Anna's suicide in his sentencing remarks. I wrote one final letter and had it delivered to Sabrina's apartment before she reported to prison. This was never personal revenge. You made it personal when you chose to destroy people's lives for money. I hope someday you understand what being powerless feels like. And I hope you learn to use whatever power you have in the future to help people instead of hurting them. I never expected a response, and I didn't get one. But I felt closure, knowing that justice had been served, not just for me, but for everyone she'd wronged. The last line of my letter was simple. I hope you find a better path forward.